Al.
Good morning, good evening to all of you out there. This is your favorite podcast. I'm Al, and that's Will. And Will
Hi.
and Al know absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Today, we have a very, very, very special person on. Her name is Donna Kimmel. And I met Donna about 2 years ago when I had just gotten out of the hospital with COVID. So COVID is pretty nasty business. I was about to be put on a ventilator. I just about died those couple days. I was in the office, in the hospital, and I got out and I lost about 30 pounds in 2 weeks, and it wasn't on purpose. And when I got home and I could barely walk, a little voice, a little birdie told me, go get energy work done. Energy work? I've never gotten energy work done in my whole life. And by the way, where did that voice come from? That's weird. And so I picked up the phone and I called my friend Jennifer. My friend Jennifer is like Batman. You put up the bat signal and Jennifer shows up. She said, what do you need? I said, I need help. What do you need? I told her, I need an energy worker. She said, I got the woman for you. Probably about 30 seconds later, I get an address. I was told, be there or be square, 5 p.m. It was about 40-minute drive from my house. And I showed up to Donna's home and she did some energy work on me, working on my feet because I was so weak. I couldn't barely do anything. And she started to share her amazing story of transformation, forgiveness, and love. And I'll let her share the rest. So, Donna, how are you today?
Great. It's an honor to be here with all of you. Thank you so much.
We're honored to have you, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So where would you like me to start?
Well, in the beginning. So, growing up, where did you grow up? I know that you got married, you had children. What was your life? How did your life start? What did it become? And then where are you now?
So born and raised in Pittsburgh and was incredibly, incredibly poor, bullied for the whole time that I was in Pittsburgh, and would do things like hide on the bus instead of going to school because I didn't want to be tortured, by the kids or bullied. Moved to King of Prussia when I was 13. Got involved in rowing. Went to Immaculata for college. Met my fiance at the time, who was going to school to be a doctor. That didn't go so well. Ended up cheating on me. And then met my husband that I had children with. That also failed. And then met Larry, who I married. The kids were about 6 and 7.
And how old were you at the time?
36.
Right. And how did you guys meet?
So at the time I had a cleaning, pet sitting and catering business. And I had worked for his family. So they were all going to their shore house in Stone Harbor, and Larry appeared on the door and said, can you watch my dog while we go for the Easter holiday? And that's how I met him. So fast forward, get married, and in August 3rd of 2016, discovered that he was molesting, trafficking, and torturing my then 14-year-old daughter over a 2-year span. So
can you pause right there? Because I clearly remember when you told me the story. I think how it went was you came home, I believe, from work one day.
No, I had fallen asleep. We had a huge house and Caroline was on one side of the house and we were on the other, and in the middle was like our living space. So I had fallen asleep on the couch and I woke up for a drink of water. Uh, we had like a big kitchen island there, and my daughter had left her phone face up. And when I went to pour water, text messages started coming through and very graphic. And
Oh.
at that point, my daughter, who was autistic,
Right.
was homeschooled. She had no, like, a handful of friends. She didn't leave the house. So I was like, what is happening? And in my gut, because the text messages were referencing L, it was having the text message were saying, have Al come into your room, because my husband was pretending to be her boyfriend at that time and saying, go have your stepfather come in. I want to watch you perform oral sex. It wasn't that nice. I mean, the wording wasn't that nice.
Right.
So woke my husband up and pulled him into my daughter's room and confronted them both. And of course, my husband denied it. And my daughter grabbed her phone and deleted everything. And I had worked for AT&T. So I knew that even though you delete stuff, it doesn't go away. So the next morning, I slept with my daughter, and then the next morning called CYS, the police, her team. We had, with her being autistic, she had different people in the house every week. So called her team, and that started the whole process.
So what
And
happened?
3 days later, the police had obtained warrants to search the house, at which point the police detectives and also the FBI were involved and really searched the house, where they found materials hidden in vents and CDs. My husband had over 30 million images of child porn. So that put us on a 3-year journey. My daughter was suicidal about 4 months after that. Ended up sending her to a residential treatment facility, Timberland Knolls out in Chicago, where it was, she spent 21 days there. It was $51,000, and she came back worse, traumatized, learning how to cut, tattoo herself with a pen, versed in DNA. So at that I thought, okay, and I was in Landmark at the time in the SELP, and I thought, okay, if insurance is going to pay $51,000 for 21 days, then it's worse. The
So
medical results
one
are worse.
second.
Let's create something that works.
1 second.
Yep.
So a lot of your, 2 out of the 3 people you're speaking to are Landmark graduates.
Right.
And if you don't mind, could you back up? Because that's how you know Jennifer, correct? My
Correct.
friend Jennifer, who introduced me. Why don't you back up to the point in the story where I think it was after the trial, what you were dealing with and how you got involved with Landmark Education and what difference it made.
So it was almost immediately. My friend Miriam was also in Landmark, and best friend said, you really need support around this, more so than what I can provide you as a friend. And I really love this program. It's really great. So I entered into Landmark 2 months after discovery. So he was arrested in August, and I did the forum, I think October.
So when you say discovery for trial?
No, discovery of what was happening. So
Okay.
it was August, September, October, 2 months later, I entered into Landmark, which was
Of what year?
2016.
Got it. Okay.
Can I ask? Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can I ask you, what did you get out of the forum?
So what I got out of the forum, especially in that space, was I had a lot of guilt of not protecting my daughter or knowing that this was happening. I felt stupid. Guilt and shame were huge, huge. So what the Landmark Forum gave me was a different perspective on things. I didn't have to keep all of that. I could let that go. And I could view it through a different lens. rather
once
than making myself wrong or my daughter wrong, because there was that whole thing that like, why would my daughter sleep with my husband, right? In that space, because I didn't have all the information I had as we progressed through legal discovery with the FBI and the detectives.
right.
So
So
manipulative.
it's a very triggering subject for our listeners, as you would imagine,
Oh,
you know.
for sure.
And so for them to hear, oh, well, I just did this course and they said it was okay, like that won't resonate with them. Do you
Okay.
remember like being in the course? And I know there's a forum leader and there's a format. So like which day, like in other words, how did you go in? Did you, when you walked in that room, was there a lot of judgment? Like nothing can make a difference. I know what he did, anger, the whole, I feel stupid. And
What
then
I loved
something happened in the room and something started to shift. Or was it like during one of the homework project assignments that you did that you noticed that something started to shift for you?
So for me, it was being in a very diverse group with, all over the place from one end to the other.
Right.
Really got to see humanity and the suffering that we all experience to some degree, and how that suffering can potentially impact our lives if we allow it. So Kathy Elliott was my forum leader. Loved her. She was very compassionate, took time outside of the group to have one-on-one interaction with me. And my daughter was also with me at that time. She went through the forum with me.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Kathy spent time with her and also me individually. So it was just, I felt the Landmark group was very compassionate and understanding, no judgments, um, present, listened. Um, the coaching was phenomenal.
Right.
So that's really where I shifted. Just to there was a judge in our group that both of their sons had died in a fire.
Oh.
So seeing all kinds of different trauma, rapes, molestation, trafficking, just a lot of mixed bag of everything, but fundamentally trauma and how we process it or how we keep it, and how I was scared of everybody. That part where they're walking around where they reveal that we're afraid of each other, like to have that spoken and to hear that and to get that, okay, so I was terrified of people because I was bullied, and that's where I was generating from.
Right.
To get that people are also afraid of me,
Right.
right?
Yeah. So
So
for the audience, because I want to give a context for uh there's an exercise, I think the third day in,
okay,
where everyone's in the room, and everyone closes their eyes, and it's I think it's not a being with, I forget what it's called, but like you discover that you're kind of afraid of the world. You consider the world to be this super dangerous place where there's someone around every corner that's going to get you, and you live from this place of fear and concern. It's this underlying survival mechanism that we all live from as human beings. But then as the forum leader guides everyone through it, you start to realize that the person sitting next to you to your right and the person sitting next to you to the left consider you, this enormous threat to them and to their survival. And you get it, like it's like a joke. Everybody's afraid of everybody and everybody's afraid of you,
right.
So once you get that, and you get some space available in your life to realize that you're a very powerful person, and that so is everyone else around you, and so everyone's the same, right? So you have an opportunity to give up living from that place of fear.
Right.
Yes. So then what happened?
So We went through the forum, and then at that point, that's when Caroline became suicidal, sent her out to the RTF.
What about you? What difference did it make with you? What action did you take after you completed that course?
From that space, but when my daughter then was really, after the shock had worn off, when she started hitting her rock bottom, I had the strength to go through all those, like finding a facility and
Right.
caring for her and really being present for her and not in, I was able to kind of table my own trauma to deal with my daughter.
Right.
Or not deal with, take care of my daughter,
Yes.
support my daughter.
Yes.
In a free space without judging her or making her wrong.
Right.
I had a different way of being with her, even through after all of that. It was just, I really felt love and compassion for her.
Right.
In order for you to get to that space, what did you personally had to give up?
I had to give up being right.
What were you being right about?
That I knew everything. That at that moment, I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing.
You're on the right podcast.
Practice that every day.
No, nothing.
I loved and lived with an absolute demonic monster, and I had no idea.
So what was I remember you sharing that and correct me if I'm wrong, he came from a very wealthy family of the second largest art dealer brokers on the East Coast. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right.
Well,
And you had,
he was, it was like 493 million.
right. And yet you had a house in Italy, and that's where you would every summer. You had a
house in Italy. That's where we vacationed to Italy or Germany, all over.
Right. And you had access to a private jet.
Yes, we had a jet.
Right. And horses.
Horses, yes.
Yeah. Right. So for a lot of our listeners, a lot of our listeners are struggling, financially, our brothers and sisters, and a lot of them probably have this notion that if I just had enough money, if I just had enough of this and I just had enough of that, then my life would just turn out. Right. So that's a myth, right?
It's a total myth, and money really is the root of all evil, no doubt.
Well,
no doubt.
It's a perspective.
Okay.
It's a perspective.
Well, but were you happy? In other words, when you were married and you had this jet set lifestyle, you must have thought to yourself, wow, I came from poverty and I came from nothing.
Right.
And here I have this man that, is part of this family, and I can't wait to be part of this loving family, because not only do they have money, but they're loving. Is that correct?
Yeah, but that's not the case.
Really? Okay.
Really?
Okay. So what was the family like? What was when you met them, what was your impression of them?
So like I said, I worked for his family before I met him. So I knew the family for about 5 years prior to even meeting him. I wanted that life, Al and Grace, and I wanted that life. I thought that validated who I was. To your point, if I had money, I wouldn't be teased. I wouldn't be made fun of. I wouldn't feel like a loser or less than, right? So I went to the other extreme, clearly. Private planes, $100,000 parties, just insane. And I was not happy at all. The conversations are very shallow.
What were they like?
Superficial. It's just idle chit chat, and demeaning about, they would reference, as we were sitting around the dinner table, the Minions.
What about the Minions? What were the Minions? What does that mean?
You.
Me, I'm a minion.
Oh, we're
Everyone-
we're the little people.
Anybody that wasn't in the billionaire club.
Wow.
For
Well, they
real.
weren't in the billionaire club.
Almost.
Almost. Right.
Yeah. But still, like if you weren't at that level, or if you weren't in those circles, you were looked down on.
Even though they, from what I understand, at least in your husband's case, he inherited that wealth, correct?
Correct. Correct. They all did. So,
Right.
yeah. So the money came from my mother-in-law having an affair with Leonard Andrews, who was friends with Andrew Wyeth.
Who is that for our audience? Who are those people?
So Leonard Andrews was a publisher in New York, and did a lot of other things. But Andrew Wyeth is a famous painter, if you will, in our area. The whole family. The grandfather, the father, and the son, all are painters. Jamie Wyeth is still actively painting. But Andrew Wyeth did this collection called the Helga Collection, which was of his mistress, Helga. And he sold it to Leonard Andrews, and my mother-in-law was, after Leonard passed, everything was directed towards my mother-in-law. So like the penthouse.
So basically she was just smart enough to sleep with the right guy.
Correct.
And as a result of what she did, these people these people were born on third base and act like they hit a home run.
Correct.
Right.
But most do. Most do not make the money, but they run around acting like that they're
Right.
better than.
So, most of our audience, doesn't have access to people of that sort of wealth.
Mhm.
People that have never had to struggle to pay a bill or find money to feed their children or anything like that. What's that world like?
What do you mean what it's like? Not having to worry financially?
Yeah, like not so much from your perspective, but your experience of being around the community of people that don't know what struggle is. Because a lot of people in our audience, our listeners, and people on this panel right here, they've struggled. I mean, I was homeless when I was 18.
Right.
And I know Grace has had her struggles. I know Will's had his struggles. And when you're in that place, you curse the struggle. You get upset, right? Why can't my parents, have money or whatever,
True.
And so we think that it's a bad thing. And so what's your perspective on that?
Oh wow.
Because you struggled as well.
I did struggle. And again, I'm going to say that it's not all bad. It wasn't bad at all. I mean, getting picked up in a limo, taken to a private airport, right up to the plane. You get out, people take your bags. You can go anywhere you want. You can spend anything you want. You can have as much as you want. There's no limit. And it doesn't fill that
Void.
Yeah. It doesn't fix the traumas from our childhood. It doesn't take away the bullying. It doesn't negate any of that. So there's this, for me, it was just, okay, when I get there, I'm going to feel great, right? I'm not going to feel like I feel. And I still felt that way. It wasn't until going into Landmark and actually, it's not even so much Landmark. I had everything stripped away from me, right? So the minute that I had him arrested, the Iron Curtain came up. I was then put in as a renter in our marital home. We were evicted. I had no job, no access to
Stop. Slow down. Who owned the house?
my mother-in-law, because she was smart enough to put everything in an LLC. So
Wow.
we then, me and the kids became renters in our marital home. And
Wait. So her husband raped her granddaughter.
correct.
No, I'm sorry. Her son raped her own granddaughter.
Mhm.
And instead of being supportive of you, she treated you like a tenant and had you ejected or evicted from the house where the crime arguably took place.
Correct.
Wow.
Well, I'm gonna back up even further, right? So the day after I had him arrested, her farmhand came to our farm and he said, "Oh my God, Donna, Kathleen is so pissed at you because you didn't come to her first." And I looked at him, Lincoln, I don't need Kathleen's permission to have him arrested. And the point was is that she would have paid me off to keep it quiet because then I ruined her status and looking good.
Wow.
You know, she was a prominent interior designer at that point with, you know, all high-end clients.
Right.
So that kind of pulled the rug with me coming out and being so public with it, because at the moment of discovery, I was like, I am not making my daughter the bad one. This is not gonna, the guilt and shame is not going to be part of her world.
Yeah.
So I was very upfront with, especially when you have FBI trucks and cars and police at your house, like for 2 weeks solid. It was, this is the what so of it. And you don't have to hide or be shameful about it. You did nothing wrong. It was him. So she did not like that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
How long after you had her son arrested did she start the eviction against you, and how long did that take?
About 6 months she started it, maybe sooner. But it took a full year because of course I was fighting it.
Right.
But it was about a little under, we were evicted in June the following year. So about 8 months.
So how did that show up? Like, did the sheriff come
Yeah.
out to the house and say you have to leave?
Yes. And I had 10 days to pack a 6,000 square foot house.
On the main line, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
With
So
a
for
job
those
and so my husband being my husband, right, hadn't paid his personal taxes since 2009. So about a month later after arrest, of course, an IRS agent comes to the house and says, you owe like $1.9 million in back taxes. It's like,
oh,
right.
well, you owed it.
Well, because we were married.
Got it. So what did you do?
Well, I just said, look, I just had him arrested for trafficking my daughter and I have nothing. So she just said, that's fine, because he's in jail. So there's nothing that they're going to do to him anyways. He's already in jail.
Wow.
So they couldn't go after his assets or anything, something that his
No,
mom
again,
has.
because at that level of wealth, they're so protected.
Yeah.
They're really, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right. Everything's in LLCs,
Yeah.
trusts, things
Yeah.
like that. So
Stuff that I know
even if
nothing
they
about.
get a judgment against them personally,
Well, so after we went through the legal proceedings, which took 3 years, I had a civil attorney who was wonderful. He was just so great. He looked at me and he said, Donna, I just want to make sure that you get that in the case of O.J. Simpson and Nicole Brown, they were awarded whatever they were awarded. And 30 years later, the Brown family has collected like 800,000 and has spent 1.2 million in trying to collect even that. So, and he went through the whole process of what court would look like, that it's not like the criminal where they can't really attack Caroline. If you're in a civil suit, that door opens. So I just, at that point, I was like, it's my daughter's well-being has no price tag on it. So it's not worth it. And I just walked away from that.
I'll tell you, Kat, I'll tell you, Donna, you're such a strong human being.
Had to
To,
be.
to go through that amount of trauma with your daughter, with your husband, with yourself in that short amount of time, And that was right before the pandemic, correct?
2016. It happened in
The court case took several years.
yeah, it was 3 years with the court case.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you filed for a divorce.
I filed for divorce. I'm still married, actually. He won't sign the papers. He wants me to come to prison and have a conversation with him. And I really wasn't ready for that prior to really recently.
Right. So, but you told, I could have sworn you told me that you did go to see him to ask him, why he did what he did. Would you mind sharing with the listeners what he shared?
I haven't done that. He has not. I have not seen him.
Oh, got it. Okay. And so I also remember when I went to see you that it was the first time I'd ever heard of what you refer to as bufo, which is the toad venom ceremony. But you only referred to it as bufo, and you said that that was right after you did the landmark forum, and that was the first medicine that you were introduced to. Plant. Well, it's not a plant medicine, but
Right.
theogen, whatever you want to call it. So would
So-
you mind sharing what that was like?
How I got into all of that, I'm going to back up a little bit further. So when Caroline came back out of rehab or the residential treatment facility and wasn't doing well, at that point, regardless of what it took, if somebody said, if you stand on your head and spin around or do whatever, it's going to heal your daughter, I would have done it. So I was
breakdancing, essentially.
Hmm?
Breakdancing. You would have learned.
Yeah,
to break.
whatever. Yeah, sure. If that would have done it, I'm in, regardless of my age. So I was not ready to lose my daughter to suicide. And I thought, okay, I got to find something that works for trauma, whatever it is. So that's when I started exploring soul retrievals and journeying with shamans or angel workers. I reached out to, I was born and raised Catholic, so spoke to priests, spoke to angel workers, kind of just was kind of feeling out everything because nothing, and then I would have Caroline try whatever. I would try it first and then I would have her try it. So through the shaman, of course, the mixed bag of Sananga, which is for the eyes, Kambo, which is for the body. Bufo was mentioned, San Pedro was mentioned, all of which I tried, but I did the Bufo, and that's when I really I got to see the divine, the connection with divine.
So if you wouldn't mind, sharing with the audience, some people may not be familiar, so we might have new listeners, I don't know. What is Bufo, and how did you just back up, give a little bit of detail on your ceremony, if you don't mind?
So the shaman brought Bufo, which is you smoke it, and
it comes from a toad, correct?
it comes from a frog, yeah, toad. They scrape the poison off the back, and then you smoke it, and you have a shaman sit with you to just kind of make sure that you're okay and that nothing crazy happens, but you're basically allowed space. They basically hold space for you to process whatever comes up. The shamans believe that we're just kind of guides, and the plants or the frog medicine, sacred medicine, is far more intelligent and will do what it needs to do. So on my journey, I just that was the first time I've ever done psychedelics. So my senses, the first thing that happened was sight, sound, smell, taste, all were heightened to a crazy degree.
Did you have visuals? Did you experience anything in your ceremony that made a difference?
So it was, for me, it was just very loving and supportive, which is what I needed at that time, to feel that I was being supported by God, and I would like, this was all happening for a reason, and that everything would be okay. In that is where I heard everything would be okay.
So you were told in your ceremony, everything's going to be okay?
Everything would be okay.
Did you stay in your body, or did you leave your body during
I
that?
left my body out into the ethers. There were like the psychedelic trips that you see, there was a lot of gold filament and fractals, mandalas with fractals
I
and
remember those, yeah.
beautiful visuals. And then rising up above that, so just to see like everything kind of spread out in the universe was really beautiful.
I mean, what was that like for you? I mean, because you shared that you grew up Catholic, and a lot of times Catholics are lapsed Catholics. In other words, they might go to Easter Mass once a year, or maybe Christmas, or maybe both, and they're not really practicing, that religion for a variety of reasons. And then for you to have been through what you went through, and then do this ceremony, not knowing what you're going to get out of it, and all of a sudden, you're out of your body and you're experiencing a mandala is a Buddhist or Hindu concept, right? And
Yes.
what was that like? What was that like for you to see something or hear something like otherworldly? Was that like your first like real supernatural experience?
No, because my whole life I really, even though I was born and raised Catholic and I believe in Jesus and that was my path, I had always been pulled to other modalities, even when I was young, very young. Kind of like foreshadowing of what would come in my life or what was going to be a major part of my life.
Mhm.
So Louise Hay's were books that I had when I was
Chaos.
years old.
Yeah.
Right. So I specifically remember her books, or going down to South Street, the Garland of Letters.
Oh, I was just there the other day.
Yeah, love it. So, but
Yeah.
that was when I was 17, 18 years old. So I had always been dabbling in crystals or incense or just different ways of thinking or perceptions outside of what the Catholic teachings really didn't resonate with me.
Right.
So after your first experience, how would you say that changed your perspective? What changed about your perspective after the first psychedelic experience?
Peace.
Peace.
True peace. And there was that was the first, and it was a very short journey, relatively speaking, to the other sacred medicines that I've tried. So
How long did it last?
I'm going to say about 20 or 30 minutes. That's it. Very short, compared to like the cactus is about was an 18-hour journey for me when I did San Pedro.
Wow.
Aya's a little shorter. Aya's definitely shorter.
Yeah.
It's about 6
4
hours,
6 hours. Yeah.
roughly. But
Donna,
yeah.
Donna, how would you say you said you found peace and you found an understanding with the divine in a way? How
Yeah.
did you integrate
Right.
what
Good
you
question.
experienced in your first trip?
So that's why when Grace and I were talking today before this call, and I was saying that is what's lacking in this world right now, is the integration of when you're on a journey like that, what do you do with it? Like, after Al's journey, he called and we were talking, and he has other people around him that are in this world to help navigate those waters. But at that time I had my shaman, so he would help. We had a lot of conversations about, and things would come up even after the ceremony, whether it's whatever ceremony it is. Things continue to come in, downloads, hits, whatever you want to call them, epiphanies. So it was just, for me, being in a peaceful state or feeling connected to God. And I'm going to bounce over. It was ayahuasca, in an ayahuasca ceremony, that I really got connected with God. Like I felt God come through me. And I felt that overwhelming love. And I hadn't cried. I hadn't cried since I was 13 at all. And I was bawling. It was
All of it.
it was so awesome. So awesome.
if you don't mind backing up a little bit, so you did the bufo, and then how long after that did you do ayahuasca?
Real quick. I was just reaching for everything. So, oh, and then combo, and then
Okay, but the
paid.
ayahuasca, right? So you did that out of the country?
My first ayahuasca journey was at my house where you
Oh,
were.
okay.
It was with, again, God is great, or universe is great.
Yeah.
At that point, so my shaman did not do ayahuasca. He only did cactus and the frog. So we had another shaman come in. It was a female. And I did not do my due diligence. I didn't know enough at that point, and it was the most horrific experience. My first ayahuasca experience, and I don't even know if it was ayahuasca. It
What
was
happened? What
chocolate.
happened? Chocolate.
Yeah. So they she gave us kana, which is supposed to be a heart opener, which was wonderful. That was, it just kind of puts you in that peaceful, non-anxiety state.
Okay.
She gave us the chocolate ayahuasca. And I did not journey, but I had other people there that were also involved in sacred medicine. And one woman instantaneously started hissing, and she was elderly. I mean, not elderly, but older. Not older people should not be moving in that way, like contorting and very devilish or snake-like.
Really?
Yeah, really. It was horrible.
Like a possession, like a exorcism.
I had one interesting experience with Mary Jane in a very dangerous way, where I started growling like a wolf or a lion to my wife, and I said, "What the hell is going on?" So yeah, it's interesting, but that's something else.
From an edible?
From an edible, yeah, it was a little too much.
Interesting.
And there's
So
a for everything, and like I don't have anything. Being in the jungle and working with ayahuasca like I did, and being trained with it, you see everything and you learn. You learn. But the point of that is that the shaman wasn't really a shaman. There was no integrity around that, and it was really dangerous. It's a
say.
horrible experience. So it kind of like who I am now. I overcompensate for, I don't want anybody to have that experience I did with any kind of, like, do no harm, and make sure people are informed and make sure there's a lot of communication. So
So that was your first journey. Then your second one was better.
my second journey was in New York with my now mentor, who I love. She's just beautiful soul. She's straight up love and has a lot of integrity. Her facility is meticulous and beautiful. And in those ceremonies, it just brings love, even if you're working with shadow. And she's trained, so she knows prior to somebody bringing up their shadow or demonic, right, that's going to happen. So there was a man in one of my first ceremonies up in New York that was purging some dark shadow demon stuff, growling, hissing. But this time, she had already gone over to his mat before it happened. They were using the rattles and the prayers, and he was contained on his mat, and he was allowed that space to process and work through what was happening with him.
What was I'm interested in hearing, like, firsthand, and probably our audience is too. You know, what on that journey, was that a breakthrough journey for you that time? Was it the one that you cried in? Or maybe you could take us through.
No, that was like 5 months later.
Would you mind taking us through that one?
The one that I was crying and
Yeah,
everything.
that was like the breakthrough one, where it was like it I don't know, like when I hear you say that, it's almost like a dam that's holding back all this water, and then finally there's a burst in the dam and all the water comes rushing out. Is that how it occurred for you? I don't know.
So I had so many layers of trauma through my life that were stacked, right? So through landmark and other modalities and doing plans for frogs or clearing the body with combo, right before I went to the jungle, I wanted to do one more time with Kaya, my mentor up in New York, before I went to the jungle and did that. So the first night that I got there, I set an intention to teach me how to love, teach me really how to love and open my heart. At that point, I was really closed off and jaded and didn't trust anybody. And that's when not Aya, but God came through. And it was just this, again, Al, this overwhelming, like, incredible love that there's no words or way that I could even remotely articulate that feeling or sensation that I felt. Very spiritual. I was, moving like this, clearing whatever I was clearing on my mat, after I had cried. So I felt God come through. I relived some trauma. And that's when everything broke wide open. As he came through my heart, I was able to really get that it doesn't matter who's around me. My Father is my creator, and I'm special, and he wants to use me for healing going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I shared with really, I think pretty much everyone here that when I was in my ceremony and I experienced unconditional love for the first time in my life, I was so blown away at what that was. And then upon seeing it, I became it as well. And that's the moment I was able to let go and surrender. And it was the most powerful thing I've ever felt in my life. And everything else paled in comparison.
Mhm.
Even, the love of my children, the love of my wife, the love of my mother, nothing compared to that. And I was in an ecstatic state, and it taught me just to let go. And what I also realized is that I'd been making people wrong because the love I would give them, I would never receive back, as if my love was unconditional. So I was full of shit too. I wasn't giving them unconditional love. I don't know. I don't honestly even know if I'm honestly 100% capable of unconditional love. I think the best you can do is try to practice giving and receiving. And just like jujitsu or just like anything else that's a practice for you, you're gonna fail because you're human. You live in this body, and this body is meant for survival. And so I really had to deal with myself too around giving and receiving of love, and I still do every day. But I put stuff on people like they should love me in a particular way, you know, and I'm asking something of other human beings that they really cannot give me. I mean, maybe there's some Jesus-like figure out in the world that might, because I listen to Ram Dass, and he says, the first time he met his guru in India, it was the first time he experienced unconditional love, and he was transformed instantly.
Mhm.
There's probably very few human beings like that on this planet. So I don't think it matters how you get there, so long as you get there, and then really what you do with that information and that experience moving forward.
So a couple of things I have in mind. I wanted to ask a question for all of you. Do any of you, I asked you this before, Al, but you can still answer. Do you ladies and Al, do you meditate at all, sitting in stillness, like Vipassana, just Zen, any style of awareness, just sitting down, your eyes closed, 15 minutes, what we just did, so, from the beginning of this, prior to recording this, that, thank you for that, Grace, by the way. I never actually tried that. I was a sort of meditation style, but like kind of like writing a letter and burning it and letting it go. And then bringing it into fruition, so to speak. So that was a beautiful manifestation technique. I looked at it as. But back to the question: do you ladies meditate? And if you do, have you found yourself in a similar situation to this love, to this inner bliss, this inner awareness that is it's boundless, spacious. There's no words that can express this. You can say love, you can say whatever they would try to say, but have you experienced that just sitting in stillness at all?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I was just curious because I found that before my first psilocybin trip or psychedelic trip, I used to do Mary Jane. And then before that, before I did Mary Jane, I would meditate and I would struggle because of the thoughts. How's up?
Reading,
I can't hear you out. Sorry.
smoking or eating or smoking it.
I was smoking it at first, and then I found edibles as a better way so that I don't have to inhale something in my lungs. It was better to, consume something.
Not for me. Not for me.
But before all that, I had to learn to meditate, whatever. And I sat in stillness a bunch of times through the COVID times. And before that, 5 years prior, trying to learn how to sit with my thoughts and fight with them and not fight with them, letting them go, blah, blah, blah. And then after the Mary Jane happened, that's when I realized, oh, it was one of those aha moments, those epiphanies that this is really interesting. That I don't know if you agree with this, Donna, that Mary Jane is like kind of psychedelic in a way or something of that nature. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
experienced,
Sure.
what's up?
No doubt.
Okay. Because what I experienced after 5 years, about 5 years of practice and meditation, it was Mary Jane that like did the trick. It just, oh, this is enlightenment. And then I fell for that. And I thought I was awakened and all that. And I thought I found everything that the monks were looking for. And I was like, oh my God, I found it through Mary Jane. Oh my God, this is whatever. But getting to that. What's up?
You did.
I did,
You
but
did.
it wasn't the end of it. It was more of it brought me into a loop of me thinking I was done. And then I found out, oh, there's more to this. Okay. So the psychedelic, and then it taught me more. And today, even talking to you, Al, I'm still learning today, even Al, like even sharing that quote with you that I misquoted earlier when I said, wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything.
Mm.
Prior to that, I said, wisdom is knowing nothing. Love is knowing everything. But anyway,
my wife feels the same way. She tells me every day, I'm always learning from you, sweetheart.
yeah. So I didn't want to take this off too much of a different approach, but I was just curious because you guys are talking about psychedelic experiences that it led you to this loving awareness, so to speak. And for listeners that can't have access to psychedelics or are scared, afraid to take psychedelics, or they don't want to get in trouble because it's not legal everywhere, it's not accessible, I can be honest and say that this right here came to me. I asked the universe, so to speak, and it came to me. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Like how it approached me when I had a passion to understand the mind. And when I asked for it, it came to me. I forget that quote, Al, or anybody that knows the Bible, but thou asketh or something like that. I don't know if that resonates with anyone, but if you ask, thou you receive it, something like that.
Receive,
In the Bible.
I know nothing about the Bible, so sorry.
It's
I
like
think
ask as you receive.
Yes, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I always tease Will. I always say, for a 33-year-old guy that looks like Jesus, you know nothing.
Jesus is much more. Jesus is much more handsome, but thank you.
Look, take a really good look at Will. It does look like a depiction.
The sun is,
I think, like a medieval
in my way now.
Jesus. The sun is in your way.
No, I said the sun
You are
is
the sun.
shining on me, trying to
You
give
are
me the
the sun.
spotlight, give me the attention. I see you.
Same thing with Donna. Look, okay, got it. Thank you, Donna.
That was
So we
connecting
got a
with
little
Donna
derailed.
too. Anyway, yeah, go
There
ahead.
you go.
Sorry.
We're both doing it. So Donna, getting back to our interview.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all great. And for your listeners,
Okay.
I highly recommend you using Mary Jane, especially right before bed. Put on some music like out the 436 or the whatever music that really speaks to you, that is soothing and a higher vibration, and journey on. Really, and then so what I found stepping into Mary Jane is that I ate an edible and it took me the ethers. I couldn't move, I could not walk, but it put me in that blissful state. So what I then figured out is, whether you're smoking or eating, just do one more. And that kind of really, instead of the door being just cracked open, it opens her wide open, and you can step through then.
Donna, you're a party.
That's my experience.
Was that after you've done your psychedelic trips?
Yes.
Okay, you're a brave soul. That's
Never touched marijuana my entire life until I got back.
That now I
Wow.
would, in my opinion, just my perspective, I would caution the listeners, if you've done psychedelics first, I feel like those are stronger with giving you that realm of experience versus Mary Jane. Mary Jane will throw you in there and you will be lost. I'm going to be honest, and I had several bad experiences with Mary Jane doing too much, where my thoughts were saying you need to murder your children, and I was like, what? Like talking to myself out of it. Stop, you're not going to murder anyone. And like literally 5 seconds later moving like, you're not going to do anything, stop. And then I learned to, oh wait, I learned this in Vipassana. These are just thoughts. These are thoughts. And then I relaxed after that. But there's like experiences for everyone listening. The approach is different.
Yeah, and I will also add that, environment, it's very important.
Yes.
Anything. And, being intentional, like just not do it because you want to do it because you have a purpose, you have an intention.
Right.
Ask for clarity.
Ask for protection too, if you
Yes.
that makes you feel safe. And because I didn't ask for protection, I was really cocky.
So Donna, when I met you, and you shared, your story up until that point with me, other things happened afterwards. But I remember one of the things that you shared with me, and correct me if I'm wrong, because my memory is after COVID, not so great. But you said that, after these experiences with the psychedelics, the Bofu and Landmark, that you decided to rededicate your life to becoming a healer. And not only that, but that you were going to dedicate your life to building a home for children that have been sex trafficked. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I'm going to jump back to when you had asked me to clarify my ceremony in New York where God came through. That's also what I was sharing with Will and Grace earlier, that in that ceremony on the last day, the third night, I saw myself take a step forward, reach up for the sky, and I turned into this blue glowing tree. And I was like, what the kind of shit is this? I want to be like an eagle or a lion or something cool. I don't want to be a freaking tree. Blue tree.
Turn into a blue tree.
How dare you?
What does that mean?
You offended my tree god over here. So,
Right?
jeez.
No disrespect whatsoever, but it was like, I then found out that the tree that appeared or that I turned into was Noya Rao. She's a deity in Peru. She's bioluminescent, so she glows blue. Her leaves, when they drop, are glowing blue. So
that
beautiful.
sounds like the movie
Avatar. So when I was in Peru, it very much reminded me of Avatar, for sure.
Got it.
The whole way of living, the harmony that the indigenous are in with the world. But
Would-
that was what really called me to Peru to be, or the universe or God pushing me towards becoming a healer. It was time for me to be trained in sacred medicine and to experience that I really got to see that all of this chasing of materialism or the programming that we're, you guys good? So everything that we're chasing is just a complete illusion. That what really matters is connection and service to others and love, being in harmony. That really got solidified in Peru for me.
Yeah, it's amazing that you share that, because I had the same exact experience last time with my ayahuasca experience. Connection with love. That's what we are. Like, everything is an illusion, even time.
Right.
Mhm, yes.
Everything is an illusion. And
Yes.
you are connected to the source, which is God, and just love. That's who you came here to be. To love, to receive love, and to give love, and to serve others.
And that you're me, I'm you,
Yeah.
right? We're
We
one,
are each other.
we're
Mhm.
one.
God, you're handsome.
I'm a so sorry, I didn't mean to digress.
No, it's actually beautiful what we're saying, and me and Will have this conversation all the time, right? Will?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're different kind of cats. That's why we have a podcast where we know nothing.
Yes.
Um,
Definitely
mean-
different energies, I should say, but similar. It's really interesting.
So when you decided to become a healer was after your ayahuasca session, and you turned into the blue tree. What's the name of the goddess again? The tree goddess?
Noyrao. Noyarao.
Okay, got it. And so just because you have a transcendent experience like the one that you had, it doesn't automatically mean that the rest of your life is going to work out now, does it?
Oh no.
So when that experience is over and you come back home, what are you still coming home to?
So I spiritually and emotionally, I'm on this super high,
Right.
physically, all body, mind, spirit, all in alignment, in love, grateful. And then I come here, I come home, and I'm smacked with, my parents and my sister.
Sorry. I feel you.
Can
I feel you.
you be more specific, please?
It was just everything from childhood. Like, it was just like, okay, so integration, here we go. You right off the plane, right when I got off the plane. My dad's up my ass, or my sister's criticizing, and I'm just like ego comes back, human comes back.
Right.
And then there's all this craziness with COVID and mask, and people are so freaked out, and violence and trash, and just so how do I integrate what I learned in the jungle, or the bliss, the sheer bliss that I found? How do I have that here in the midst of all of this struggle, challenge, triggers? So it has been a roller coaster ride. And even, as you know, a month ago, I went off the rails.
Do you mind sharing what happened or no?
So two of my friends within a 2-week span, one shot herself in the head and her husband found her. And then another one a week later, 10 days later, overdosed. Now, these are my friends, and I'm a shaman. And here comes the guilt again. Okay, so I had no idea, right? And I felt that I wasn't there for them. And okay, I was on this high, and now I'm on this low of, I really don't know anything. I can't even prevent people that are close to me. So I feel like an imposter. Like, how do I step forward with this when I can't even support my immediate circle, right? So
So
that
I remember you sharing that the one friend was a trust fund baby, correct?
they both were.
They both were,
They
right?
both-
So you know, because one of them, I think you shared with me, basically ran through all her inheritance
Correct.
and there was no more money left.
Correct.
And so because that human being never had to struggle and couldn't maybe even humble herself to go and get a regular job so she could just live a normal life and not a jet set life, I presume. Her answer was to shoot herself, I suppose. Is that what happened?
No, so no, that was
You got the friend.
the friend in Mississippi.
Okay.
Was her family is billionaire status.
Wow.
She was also molested by her stepfather over decades, and just she resorted to drugs and alcohol to numb her pain, and was the whole family. Just like everything, it's drilled down that what's important is materialism and the zeros and looking good, and it's got to be like this. And it was very empty, I'm assuming, for her. And
Shallow.
she just got to the point that it was overbearing, and decided that it was at this point at 60. Um, but so the one in Mississippi had access to everything still. So again, money does not take away pain. It doesn't validate. It doesn't. Um, she committed suicide, and again, she had everything on paper. Beautiful house on the bayou with boats and planes and whatever. No financial worries whatsoever. But didn't fix the soul or the break. And then my other friend that overdosed, she's the one that ran through her trust fund. And again, also, she was sexually assaulted when she was young, developed fibromyalgia, which I think is a secondary symptom from trauma. Ran through her money and then just was not able to work, and I guess she just thought that this is it. She doesn't want to struggle, and doesn't want to feel the pain anymore.
Got it. And yeah, because originally you were supposed to be our first guest ever, but you were still dealing with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just really want to acknowledge, man, like everything that you've been through and how resilient you are and how courageous you are. And I remember when you were helping me when I was pretty much at my weakest point and you were sharing some of what you shared with me, I was in a pretty dark place. I just had COVID and I was dealing with like a lot of really heavy personal issues, financial issues, issues around my marriage, issues around my relationship with my mother. And I was just I was dark, I was weak. And you sharing what you'd been through, I remember just listening to you. And when you got done sharing, I said, Donna, I'm going to say something to you that I don't think I've said to many people in my life. And you said, well, what's that? I said, you're my fucking hero. You're my fucking hero. Because for you to have been through all that you've been through and still standing and still wanting to demonstrate love to other human beings and rededicating your life to wanting to make a difference. I needed to hear that was possible because I was in such a dark place. And I used to be the person that was like you, that wanted to go out and make a difference and wanted to run into that burning building. And I'd become the opposite. I'd become angry and selfish and self-righteous and a fucking dickhead, an asshole, that was just like, I became apathetic,
Mm,
and I was so stuck in my point of view that I couldn't even get out of my own fucking way. So to hear you share what you shared, and made a huge difference. It gave me life again. It wasn't just the energy work that you gave me that day, it was what came out of your mouth and how raw you were willing to be with basically a fucking stranger. Because that's what I was. I was just a friend of a friend, you
right.
know? And I remember also you gave me a stone to take with me. I still have it in my house. And also, probably for like a week or two afterwards, you kept following up with me to make sure that I was okay, if I needed to come in again, and that also touched me. It made a difference with me as well. And I consider you, a friend. We talk all the time now.
Right.
And, I just, I can't acknowledge you enough. Like you really made a difference and saved my life. I don't think I'd be here sitting here right now if it wasn't for you and other people like you, for sure.
Thank you. Honored, totally honored. And I think it's really important to be vulnerable, to go back to that point, for all of us to be vulnerable, because that's one of the things that I did, the takeaway from Landmark is it's in the sharing of our vulnerability and our suffering or our pain that real relatability happens, real connection happens. Transformation is where that's where the magic happens then. If you run around acting like, okay, I got my shit together and everything's great and I don't have any suffering and I'm all perfect, that there's no room. There's no room for that in that space.
Well, lately, the biggest thing that I'm discovering for myself and by speaking to other people, what I'm really getting is that the greater the suffering, the greater the opportunity to come closer to God.
Correct.
And I have this conversation a lot with both Will and with Grace, and actually with you privately, and I'm glad that we have a public format now to be able to share ourselves. And hopefully that sharing makes a difference and it creates a positive vibration out in the world. And recently you actually did share with me, and I hope you don't mind if I bring it up or not. We can edit it out if you want us to leave it out, that you're considering going to the prison where your husband is being held, and what would be the purpose of going there?
So even though in one of my ayahuasca ceremonies, I was able to sit with my husband and my mother-in-law at like a table in spirit form, right?
I didn't know that.
They're both still living. So it was when I was in the jungle, actually. So I sat across from my husband and my mother-in-law, and I was able to, my heart was open and forgive them on that level. And then through our conversations, Al, it's I just feel compelled to go to prison because where I'm at now with conversations with God, that little excerpt that I sent you, I really got that we sign contracts with each other before we come here. And it's my growth in particular, or what I see where people really grow is through the suffering or challenging times. We don't grow when everything's fine or perfect, or you don't have the struggle. But so how I view my husband made the ultimate sacrifice coming to this place, at this time, doing what he did, knowing before he came in, that he would spend his last years in prison so that I and my daughter would grow. That's how I look at it now. So my husband actually gave us a huge gift. And I wanted to share that with him, that I don't hate him. that I don't think he's bad, that I'm eternally grateful for the experience because I wouldn't be who I am without it at all. So,
So am I correct in saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's based on our conversation. I want to make sure that I'm clear and that I didn't misinterpret you.
mhm,
That you're going to visit your husband who raped your daughter in prison so you can not only release him, forgive him to his face,
right,
but you're going there so you can ask for his forgiveness for ever having judged him in the first place for what he did. Is that correct?
correct. All correct.
Yeah, and have love and nothing but love and compassion for him.
Correct.
And not only that, but your perspective is that before you incarnated and before he incarnated into this lifetime like a possibility, that on the other side, he agreed to do something horrible
Mhm,
so that you could experience pain and suffering, so that pain and suffering could bring you closer to God and who you truly are on this planet, which is a healer and someone that loves humanity and someone
correct.
that loves herself. Is that correct?
Yeah. And not just that, my lesson was to learn forgiveness, true forgiveness. Not just say, I forgive you, but really get
Yes.
who the other person is and forgive what I viewed as wrong or bad or
How would you say? I have two questions, but I'll ask this one. How would you say, like, what is true forgiveness? What is that exactly? When you say you forgive someone, I forgive you, and
Yeah.
because I've done a lot of forgiving,
Mhm,
and I still find myself certain difficulties realizing I don't think I'm giving that true forgiveness. So I'm asking you, as a person who's struggling to forgive, so to speak, how do you actually forgive this true forgiveness?
I think that's a really personal question to each individual,
Mm,
and depending on the circumstances. But fundamentally, a broad paint stroke with that is
mhm,
just really get it. So for me, it was understanding the contract, the sacred contract between me and my husband before we came here, and my child,
mm,
right? For everyone, for the highest good of everyone involved. Again, like landmark, it's a switch in perception. It's a different perception. It's not holding, um, it's not judging that person in that same lens anymore. I don't view my husband or my mother-in-law through the same lens I did even 6 months ago. It's a totally different shift. So how do you get there is I don't know the answer to that. It came to me through an ayahuasca ceremony um, of really understanding that component. That's what switched the perspective for me that led for me to really forgive him. Does that make sense? I
in a
kind of
way,
tripping over
yeah.
my words here.
No, it's okay.
Right. So then there's that level. So like the way I look at it is, we do jujitsu, right?
Yep.
And there's blue belt level, which is a level that a good percentage of people, when they take on the practice of jujitsu, never get to. And then there's an even smaller percentage of people that get to purple belt. Then there's an even smaller percentage of people that get to brown and black belt, right? Usually takes about, at least on average, I think about 10 years to become a black belt. There's people that have done it in shorter amounts of time, right? But, out of, let's say 100 people that start doing jujitsu, maybe, I don't know, maybe 5% out of 100 attain a black belt. I don't know what the statistics are, right? And then once you achieve black belt and you think, oh, I finally made it, I'm a black belt, you realize that's really just the beginning of your journey. Then there's teaching and training and developing other people to become black belts themselves. And, they're all just reflections of you. on the same journey. And for me, the highest level black belt of forgiveness is not only forgiving that person and really getting why they did or didn't do whatever they did or didn't do to you, but getting that pain that that person caused you is the greatest teacher you've ever had. And not only giving up the right to ever judge that person again, but thank that person for their service, for the teacher that they've been to you. And never ever mentioning it ever again, just completely surrendering to everything that that person taught you and thanking that person. That for me is the highest level achievable that I know of. Maybe there's others I'm not aware of, but there probably is. But for me, that's the place that I'd like. That's the level I'd like to achieve.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, I think too, one of the things that sorry, I just like I heard something and I just want to get it out before I forget or swirl off of it. How would you treat a child that's wounded or broken? Right? If you can look at the person that has offended you in some way or harmed you in some way, there's some trauma or brokenness in that person. So for my husband, he was molested by his mother since the time he was 8 until he was 58. There was that incestuous stuff happening. So and I don't know for a fact, but I would say that whatever happened to my mother-in-law. So it's, you know,
cyclical.
You don't put down the sword. Somebody's got to put down the sword, because as long as you're carrying that sword, you're going to use it against somebody else. So it again, switching the perception or viewing them from the broken child that they are, because we're all broken children.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And
And you know, that person never received love,
or
let
something
alone
was done to them that they're
let alone unconditional love. So they've collapsed love with sex and who knows what else, and it's painful, and it's a distortion of what true love is.
correct.
Yeah.
And it doesn't practice, and it takes time.
Yes.
It's not something that happens overnight. It wasn't like, you know, oh, okay. And still, you know, my dad just pissed me off today. My father. So
Yeah.
You know.
I asked that because earlier when I said about forgiveness, because my mom, I love her to death. And I hold nothing against her. I hold nothing against anybody that gave me all the most painful things that I have experienced in my childhood: bullying, rape, molestation, you name it. I almost experienced about everything. And that suffering is that it showed me something valuable in it. An appreciation for it, you know, a teacher, like, you know, Al said. And, you know, I confused it, of course, because it's, you point the finger, of course, you want to point the finger at the individual. How dare this person is the reason why I'm this way.
Right.
And you know, power away.
What is it?
It's your fault. You gave your power away, not that person.
Well, yeah, you don't learn that though. You're like, wait, what? My fault? How is it my fault? I didn't do it to me, right? That's the person who's not aware, who doesn't understand, who's learning, you know, white belt or no belt, whatever you want to look at it as, until you have a certain aha moment where you're either introduced to psychedelics or you're introduced to something. Life is going to give it to you. You know, God is going to touch you in a way with his blessing, with his love, you know, and you're going to realize, oh, but you can go multiple ways, of course, but you're still directed back to the center of your own being, of who you are inside, within, and without, you know, how you look at others. And then you start to develop, like you said, blue belt, purple belt, you know, some people quit, some people get lost, confused, but some people continue to develop little by little. Yeah. And, you know, I've been learning little by little as far as my mom, as much as I try to reach out to her just to I try to reach out to her so that I can forgive her. You know, I try to like literally go to her face and just forgive her, you know, and say I love you and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all the blame that I've done, all the pain I've caused. I'm sorry for what you've experienced as a child, that you'd pass the torch on to me. I'm sorry. This is everything that I've experienced. I wanted to face her directly and tell her that. And it was like, there's like, shut, door shut, door shut. So I'm like, you know, I asked my wife, you know, what should I do? And she's like, you have to do something different that she doesn't expect. If I'm misquoting what she said exactly, it was way more better when I'm saying it. But basically, I'm not completely shut off from my mom. I didn't cut myself completely, but I left myself, like I stopped looking to, it's the same way you're trying to get rid of your thoughts. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. When you meditate, you're trying to get rid of your thoughts. Like I get rid of my thoughts, like emptiness. It was that learning that no, don't even try. Just be with it, you know, don't force it. Or Alan Watts' better way of saying it, let the mud fall down the water and it'll settle itself. And that's something very powerful for me personally, where I'm learning still today with forgiveness for my mother and acceptance of her grace, you know, of my father's grace, anybody that that I hated with like I wanted to murder a lot of people. I thought I was a serial killer. I thought I was a racist. There was a lot of things I thought I was because of these thoughts. They confuse you and they make you think that you're this, you're that, you're this, because your experiences, now you're this, you know? And Donna, like I said, well, like Al said, I was thinking it the whole time, but Al was speaking it for me. But I got so much love for you, Donna, for revealing yourself, being vulnerable, because you're teaching me how to be more vulnerable. And I want to cry so bad, but I'm like,
Go
you're
ahead and do it.
trying to be macho, but I'm not. I'm
Bring it
letting,
in.
I'm just learning from you, Donna. And you gave me perspective, even with your husband, even you forgiving him. And it's a beautiful thing what you're doing. And I hope all the listeners are paying attention to what you're saying, and all of us, you know, what we're all sharing here, because this is the most beautiful podcast episode I ever heard, hands down. From my own experience, listening to so many thousands of other podcasts, this one right here was like something hit me here, and now I'm gonna hold on to that, and I want to paint something with this. And I thank you, Donna. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you know, that's the reason that I wanted, you know, Donna to really be the first human being that we had on the podcast. And unfortunately, you know, it didn't work out. So you're fourth. But four is a very important number as
It's a
well.
grand slam.
Right? Yeah. And so, you know, this is the message that I'm committed, that our podcast, the vibration that our podcast put out into the universe, because in case we haven't noticed, the world's not showing up with a lot of love and forgiveness, let alone unconditional love and sharing. And this is the way that we're going to move forward, if humanity is going to move forward at all.
Right.
You know, so Donna, do you have a website? Do you have a phone number? Do you have something that you'd like to promote? Anything? An Instagram? Anything?
No.
No.
No, I've been in a cocoon, and I just opened my wings. So I'm about to take flight on the 17th. So after that, yes.
Got it. So if anybody would like to reach out to Donna, you can go to our Instagram and leave a message for her. I'm sure that would make a big difference. It's Will and Al Know Nothing. At Instagram, we have a Will and Al on Facebook, correct or no?
I have to do all that. I'm sorry. That's
Got
me
it.
slacking.
Still new. We're gonna have a Will and Al Facebook,
Everything.
Will and Al Twitter, so you can curse us out if you feel like it.
Well, now
And
TikTok. I'm
TikTok,
against that, but
yeah, all the Illuminati shit. So
these
So-
episodes are so important. Yeah, go ahead.
right. So anyway, I'm going to declare this episode complete. I want to really thank everybody for being here. And if there's anything else anybody would like to say, please say it now or forever hold your peace.
Back to what Will was saying, like, Will, I resonate with what you shared with us. You know, I certainly feel that we are here as one to learn about forgiveness, to learn about detachment, and to learn about love, because at the end of the day, that's what we are. And pain is our greatest teacher. And Donald, I am extremely honored to have you, to meeting you, to learning about your story. Thank you for your stand for the people. And I love you so much. Thank you for sharing your gift with us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been such an honor to get to know both of you, all three of you, actually. Looking forward to a beautiful friendship going forward and bringing transformation, love, and healing to the world. And I don't think it all has to, I just want to end with, it doesn't have to, I think the most powerful thing is us being vulnerable and sharing. It doesn't have to come from a psychedelic journey. My opening came from Landmark, or, you know, Will, you're saying you're moved from this conversation. It's because it's true vulnerability, openness, honesty, integrity. So I don't always think you have to do psychedelics or frog or have some crazy experience. It can happen.
Yeah, like
just through love, Grace, like you're speaking.
It's funny, you know, one of the things that at one time when I was like 18 years old, I was doing a course at Landmark, and there was like a Buddhist monk in there, like in a full robe, you know, and his head shaved, you know, and he's sitting there in the chair with, you know, next to a guy in a business suit. So during the break, I was like, because I'm, you know, a big martial arts guy, you know, and I'm thinking these guys spent hours meditating in the world of that, right? So I'm like, can I ask you a question? He's like, yeah, absolutely. What are you doing here? Right? And he looked at me, he goes, monks have mothers too.
Oh, I love it.
I love everybody. God bless. Have a good night.
Oh,
And
Love you all. Love you all.
Love you all.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Till next
Thank you.
time, guys.
Thank you.